Hello everyone, Merry Christmas, and it is Christmas Eve as I am filming this. Now, normally I don't make videos on the holidays. Normally I would have taken my end of the year break by now and I'd be like, peace out, I'll see you all in January. But considering 2021 was the year that I pretty much walked away from regular uploading of videos on this channel and kind of went off and did my own thing, I figured, hey, you know what, I'll give you, those of you who enjoy watching me, you get a nice little holiday surprise and hopefully this brightens up your Christmas Eve a little bit and you get to have some fun with me as I talk about wrestling, movies, and other random bullshit that's going on. But yeah, 2021 for this year for me ended up being one of the best years of my life. I actually just got back from Hershey Park where I spent a little short 2-day trip up to Pennsylvania. Going to an amusement park, which I haven't been to an amusement park since before COVID. So it was nice to get to ride some roller coasters and do some fun things like that, even though it was freezing ass cold. And I'm shocked I didn't get sick. It's actually kind of miraculous I didn't get sick because I was like, I am going to have pneumonia by the time this is over. But no, it ended up being okay. And they have a great Christmas light display too, so that was also nice to see. And basically, that was the theme of the whole year. I decided that after 2020, I was like, you know what? I'm sick and tired of looking at computer screens. I'm sick and tired of social media, and it's time to kind of walk away and kind of take more control over my life a little bit. And I think that was a very wise decision on my part, even though it meant I spend less time here on the channel with all of you guys and all the people that I enjoy talking to. It also means that I was able to go out and make new experiences for myself and have fun in other ways and kind of grow as a person. It ended up being one of the best years of my life. So, I know that the last couple of years have been rough for everybody, obviously because of the pandemic and the constant frustration with that. And I don't want to go into the specific details about that, but I'll go ahead and my personal advice. It is possible to go out and have positive experiences even in times like this. So I recommend everybody be proactive and don't be afraid to unplug from the computer or to get off social media or to put down the smartphone for a little bit and just go out and have fun and find ways to have fun and better yourselves, whether it be exercise, picking up a new skill, taking interest in a new hobby that you've always been interested in but never made the time for. Like, go out and do some things to improve yourself. It's what I did this year, and I thought it worked out great for me. So I encourage others to do the same. But getting into the wrestling side of things, I'm not going to do an end of the year like best match, best show, all this other stuff, because honestly, 2021 is the year I've probably watched the least amount of wrestling. Starting with WWE, I think I can count on one hand the number of WWE shows I've watched this year. And that includes WrestleMania, which I watched both nights. The NXT TakeOver from that same weekend, which I was not very, I don't want to say unimpressed with, but it just felt like the spark was gone. And sure enough, it led to the reboot of NXT, which I saw the first episode of the relaunch, and I have not gone back since. I do like Rex Steiner. I refuse to call him Braun Breaker because Rex Steiner is a way cooler name. I'm really impressed with him. He reminds me so much of his dad and his uncle, but it's like, man, god damn, why you gotta give him a death sentence with a stupid name like that? But yeah, so I watched that, and I think I've watched like one Raw and one SmackDown in the entirety of the year. So that's 5 WWE shows in the span of a year. Only one pay-per-view, that one being WrestleMania. And then you look at some of the other federations. I think the only one I've been watching regularly has been AEW because of the pandemic, shows like NWA, MLW, ROH, Impact, those things kind of fell by the wayside. Even New Japan, which has been a big deal to me for the last few years, I've watched almost no New Japan since Wrestle Kingdom. And Wrestle Kingdom is coming up. I'm actually part of this video. I'm going to be previewing Wrestle Kingdom because I am going to watch it. I do want to watch it because it's Wrestle Kingdom. It's become like another WrestleMania. It's like, look, even if I'm not following it, I've got to watch WrestleMania. And Wrestle Kingdom has kind of become that for me too. It's like, look, it's Wrestle Kingdom. I got to watch Wrestle Kingdom. So, so I am going to talk about that. But as far as like match of the year, show of the year, star of the year, it's going to be, if I honestly did it and actually sat down and did the full analysis, it would be all AEW picks because that's all I've watched. I don't know. I just kind of got into the habit of watching every Wednesday. Rampages I tend to miss because, who the fuck stays home on a Friday? And once the show's already aired, it's hard for me to, kind of go back and watch it. But generally, I watch on Wednesday nights. And we've got a Christmas show on Saturday. I might actually watch that because it's like, whatever. I mean, virtually no one else will be watching. But, I could watch A Christmas Story and then, just follow it up with an AEW TV special. But they've got some stuff going on right now that I am enjoying. One of my criticisms on a recent video was that they are doing virtually nothing interesting with CM Punk. That has changed, thankfully, now that he's feuding with MJF, and they're killing it on the promos, and MJF is just being absolutely outstanding as this chicken shit heel, and the two, I think, work very well together as characters. So it makes me more excited for an eventual showdown down the road, and I thought the six-man tag this week did a superb job of, keeping the feud going without giving away any physical interactions between them. I thought that was great, and it was also great to see Sting, even at 62 years old, or however old he is, being able to shine and get some show he's not ready to go out to pasture yet. And again, I know he's being put in tag matches to kind of hide a lot of his limitations. He does look slower and older, but they present him in a way, man, where it's like he still has that magic, and I still mark out for Sting, and it's kind of it's kind of remarkable. And I really enjoyed the six-man tag this week. I thought it was a lot of fun. And other things going on, I thought Hangman and Danielson had a hell of a match, the hour-long match, even though I knew it was going to go an hour when I saw it went first. And then once it started to get to that 30-minute period, I'm like, this thing's going the full hour, isn't it? And I was right. And it sucked the life out of the second hour, because once you sit through a 1 hour match, the second hour just kind of falls flat. But I did really enjoy that match. I thought it came off very, very well. And sets up a rematch, down the road. It's a perfect reason to have a rematch. And it's like, yeah, it's pretty good. I can't wait to see the next one. It's like, you can do your follow-up, and it'll be great. It's kind of like they're taking a page out of the Flair Steamboat boat, where the second match kind of ended, it ended in a way that is somewhat inconclusive, shall we say, somewhat controversial. So now we have to bring in another match where we have judges and things like that to kind of make a better determination. And it's like, all right, I'm digging this. I'm digging this nice old school stuff. And Bryan Danielson, he's actually settled in pretty well into being a heel, much better than I would have expected given how rushed it was. And it's like, okay, I'm kind of digging this. I'm kind of liking it. And we've got the move for Dynamite's move to TBS coming next year, which will be it's going to be hard to change that habit because I'm so used to flipping to TNT. And I got to be honest, one of my favorite things to do on Wednesdays, right before, and I did this with Lucha Underground when it was on El Rey, because they would always have some movie on right before Lucha Underground. It was always a treat to see what movie was going to play. Sometimes it would be and on El Rey it was always some kind of grindhouse type of movie or something, which was always delightful. And TNT, it's usually a big blockbuster, but Kong Skull Island or one of the Godzilla movies tend to show up quite a bit. The Equalizer has been there quite a few times as well. So it's always fun to kind of tune into TNT. It's what movie are they showing right before Dynamite? So I'll catch the last 20 minutes of again Kong Skull Island or something like that. And TBS, I have not watched TBS since I was in college, because in college TBS was one of my go-to channels to watch while I was just kind of zoning out in my dorm room. And because they would always have reruns of old shows like Seinfeld and Everybody Loves Raymond, and I love both those shows. So TBS was a great destination point for me. I have not watched TBS since then, unless you count the times I go to the gym and it's on one of the TVs, and it's usually either. I feel like every time TBS is on in the gym, it's always either the George Lopez show or the Big Bang Theory. But it's going to be, I don't know, we'll see how it all plays out for AEW. I'm going to kind of miss TNT's movie selection right before Dynamite, though. That's one big change for me. We'll see how it affects them long term as far as Dynamite is concerned. And yeah, we've got the TBS championship for the women. Those brackets are shaping up. It looks like the finals probably going to be Jade Cargill versus Ruby Soho. We'll see. Could be Thunder Rosa versus Ruby Soho. Those are our options right now. We'll see how that all plays out. We also have the Owen Hart Memorial tournaments that are going to be happening next year and will be concluded at Double or Nothing. So we'll see how that all plays out. So they've got some stuff going on, and they've got some. They actually, on this week's Dynamite, they just debuted Kyle O'Reilly, which reforms Red Dragon with his tag team partner Bobby Fish, and also reunites him with Adam Cole, former members of the Undisputed Era. That's like, okay, that's interesting. That's very interesting. And it looked like the Bucks were kind of like, what are these guys doing here? And so now it's like, are we going to get the Elite versus the Undisputed Era in AEW, kind of like a AEW versus NXT style angle going on here? And I've been kind of critical of AEW lately, where it's like anytime somebody goes on the market, they instantly sign them. And it's like, guys, you can't sign everybody. It's like, guys, come on. Your roster's getting just too big. Like, their roster's almost big enough to have a brand split, I think. It's that level of big. And it's not... and it's not big, because WCW's roster back in the day was huge. Like, absolutely humongous. But there was like a hierarchy that was easier to kind of digest. Like, you brought in guys like the Hogans, the Savages, the Pipers, and those type of guys to kind of fill up the top of the card, where before it was like, look, Rude got hurt, Steamboat retired, and pretty much all you had at the top was like Flair, Sting, and Vader, and then Vader was on the way out. So you bring in, a bunch of big name stars to kind of bolster the main event side of things. And then, everybody else kind of falls into their place. You have all these up-and-comers like Eddie and Ray and Dean and Benoit and Jericho and all those guys. And it just, I don't know, it just kind of felt like everybody had like a role in the show, and you kind of got a sense of who the lower tier guys were, who the middle card guys were, and who the top tier guys were. Whereas on AEW, it's almost like everybody that comes in gets treated like a top star. And it's just way, way, way too much, because you can't, not only can you not sign everybody, you can't push everybody. Somebody's going to fall by the wayside. And I talk about Andrade a lot as being a guy who's like, just feels completely lost in the shuffle in AEW. And it feels like a bad move for both him and the company, where it's like, it's just not clicking, not fitting. And, and it's going to be complicated, because there's expectations that they're going to get Gargano, they're going to get Bray, if they haven't already. And it's like, how do you make room for all these people? Especially after you just brought in Punk and Danielson and Adam Cole and all these other guys. It's just crazy to think about. It's like all the names they've been able to sign recently, and there's still potentially more to come. And... it's, they have a really, really big roster right now. But, so far, as of right now, they're putting on solid shows. And I'm enjoying some of the things that they're doing, at least well enough to want to watch it every week. So there's that. And we'll see how everything goes heading into Revolution, their next pay-per-view. Very curious to see some of the things they set up. Hopefully they save Punk and MJF for that show, because that's the match I really want to see right now. So save it for the big show. But again, we'll see how it all plays out. Now, other companies whose current future is right now up in question is Ring of Honor, who recently ran Final Battle 2021, the end of an era, held right in my backyard in near Baltimore, Maryland. I did not attend the show. I had plans that night, and so unfortunately I was unable to attend. I wanted to. But something came up that prevented it. But I'm not going to sit here and review the entire pay-per-view, because we're already so far removed from it that me going match by match would just be redundant. But what I will say is that the show kind of felt like watching a funeral. It was kind of depressing, because you could get the sense that the guys didn't know if they were coming back, and they had all these former ROH stars, mostly the AEW crowd, like the Bucks and Adam Cole and CM Punk and Danielson, all give their thoughts on their personal histories with Ring of Honor and the company as a whole. And it's like, man, this kind of feels like a funeral, like they're saying goodbye, and we don't know exactly how it's all going to play out. Now, we did get FTR confronting the Briscoes, who won the ROH Tag Team titles for the 12th time, so you get that Tag Team Dream match of sorts down the road. We'll see when and where it happens. And you get EC3 joining up with Braun Strowman, forget his name, Titan, I think they were calling him. And they seem to be forming a group that's going to be independent of any company, and they're just kind of bounce around. At least that's the impression I've gotten from looking at it. We'll see how that goes. And Jonathan Gresham walked out as the Ring of Honor World Champion, meaning that he's the current belt holder. So, and there were some big moments that happened throughout the show, but again, it just kind of felt like a sad, like a celebration of the past and an acknowledgement of we're not what we once were, and things are potentially coming to an end. So here we go, and we're going to do the absolute best that we can with this, what might be our final show. Now, they're saying they're going to be back in April. We'll see. We'll see how it all goes. But it's going to, if it does come back, it's going to be radically different from what it was. At least that's the impression that I'm getting. And it's, I want Ring of Honor to last. It's been around for, next year it'll be 20 years. Next year, Impact will be 20 years old. I'm like, Jesus Christ, how is that? How is that even possible? Like, I remember first watching Impact in 2004 when they were on FSN, and it's like, good Lord, was that long ago? My God, 18 years? I was first time I saw TNA, it was their first episode on FSN. I was home from college for summer break, and I watched it, and that was the first time I really got to see AJ Styles. I'd seen bits and pieces of him in WCW, but I paid virtually no attention to him. And so that was the first time I really got to see AJ. It was the first time I got to see America's Most Wanted, who kind of reinvigorated my love of tag team wrestling after WWE had effectively killed their own tag division. And it was the first time I saw Abyss. And, of course, I like big monster bruiser guys, so I marked out for that. But it's, it's amazing. Like, I vividly remember that first episode, which is kind of crazy. But it's crazy to think that Impact and Ring of Honor have been around as long as they have. You almost don't realize it. Mainly because, I guess it's because they never, they never quite reached the level of a WCW, or even, I guess you would say, like today, like a WWE or what AEW is currently doing on TNT. They never quite got to that level. Although Impact came the closest when they were on Spike, they've always just kind of been like the little engines that could. So I think losing ROH would be kind of a shame, quite honestly. So hopefully, whatever they do in April, I'm going to try and watch more wrestling, because this year I kind of put wrestling on the back burner across the board, not just WWE. So ROH Final Battle, like overall, I overall thought it was a solid show, but it was also kind of a depressing one to sit through as well. But hey, what are you gonna do? And that brings me up to New Japan Wrestle Kingdom, a 2-night event that will be happening in the Tokyo Dome January 4th and 5th, with a third show on the 8th. But I'm looking at that night 3, and it looks like it's all tag matches, so I don't think anything like truly big. I mean, is night 3, for those that know more, is night 3 basically just the New Year's Dash, or what is that? I mean, that just feels like, it's literally just a bunch of tag matches and one singles match. So, I don't know. It's like, that one I'm just not going to count, because all the big title matches and grudge matches and everything are on nights 1 and 2. And the interesting about this card, and again, I have watched almost no New Japan all year long, but this show is actually co-promoted between New Japan and Pro Wrestling Noah. So there's a bit of an interpromotional thing going on, which is very interesting to say the least. And I'm looking at, there's also going to be a presence from the all-women's promotion, Stardom, I do believe. Yes, so they're going to have a presence. You're actually going to get women performing on a Wrestle Kingdom, which, as far as I know, is... it's never happened at a Wrestle Kingdom. I can't speak to whether or not it's ever happened at a Tokyo Dome event, meaning the Tokyo Dome events that predate Wrestle Kingdom. I haven't watched too many of those, but it's a couple of interesting things going on here in this card. I'm got both cards pulled up, and on night one we've got the New Japan Rambo, which is basically their dark match, Royal Rumble style match. But this one will determine who will challenge for the Provisional King of Pro Wrestling 2022 trophy on night 2. I'll talk about that when I get into night 2. Then on the main card, you've got the Battle of the Tag Team Partners, Roppongi 3K, Yo versus Sho with Dick Togo in Sho's corner. Then you've got a 6-man tag match, Hiroshi Tanahashi and the Mega Coaches, Taguchi and Rocky Romero taking on Bullet Club members Kenta, Taiji Ishimori, and El Fantasmo. And then another 6-man tag match, LIJ, Naito, Sonata, and Bushi taking on the United Empire, Will Ospreay, Great-O-Khan, and Jeff Cobb. Making his return to the ring, I understand this is his return match, Katsuyori Shibata will be taking on a opponent that is yet to be determined, so we'll find out who that is. But good to have Shibata back. I liked him. I liked his style a lot. And when he got hurt, he had that amazing match with Okada that unfortunately hurt him and it put him on the shelf. And now we've got him back. It's like, all right, cool. Let's see what he can do. Then we've got the Never Openweight Championship match. Tomohiro Ishii, the Stone Pitbull, taking on Evil, the guy that I have never seen the appeal in, and yet he's always getting pushed. I don't understand it. Like, that's one guy is like, who sees something in him? I don't get it. But then we have the IWGP Tag Team Championship, the Dangerous Tekkers, Tai Chi and Zack Sabre Jr., taking on Chaos members Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi. For the Junior Heavyweight Championship, we've got El Desperado defending the title against Hiromu Takahashi. And then for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship, we've got Shingo Takagi defending against my man, the Rainmaker, Kazuchika Okada. And that leads us into night 2. There's going to be a dark match on night 2, but based on what I'm seeing here, the participants have not been named. Then there's a 3-way tag team match for the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Tag Team titles. The Flying Tiger, Robbie Eagles, and Tiger Mask defending against Bullet Club's cutest tag team, Taiji Ishimori and El Fantasmo. Is that really what they're calling them? I didn't even know that. And the third team being the Mega Coaches, Taguchi and Rocky Romero. Then we have the women's match, Mayu Iwatani, former ROH Women's Champion, if I'm not mistaken, and Starlight Kid taking on Tam Nakano and Saya Kimitani. Now, I don't know them very well, obviously, but this will hopefully bring a nice little bit of flavor to the proceedings. Then we have the Provisional King of Pro Wrestling 2022 Trophy 4-way match. Participants, I assume, will be determined by the New Japan Rambo on night 1. Then we have the Never Openweight 6-man Tag Team Championship. They still have those belts? Why do they still have those belts? Come on, guys. The House of Torture. Okay, that's a cool name. The House of Torture, Evil, Yujiro Takahashi, and Sho taking on Chaos members Hiroki Goto, Yoshihashi, and Yo. So, actually, we've got, if I'm not mistaken here, let me double check. Hiroki Goto and Yoshihashi, they have a chance to walk out double tag team champions in this thing. So it's like, all right. We'll be following their journey. Then we've got Sonata taking on Great-O-Khan, Tetsuya Naito taking on Jeff Cobb. A no disqualification match for the U.S. Championship, Kenta taking on Hiroshi Tanahashi. And the main event will be the winner of the Takagi Okada match from night 1, defending the title against Will Ospreay. So, I'm not going to lie, not a stellar card, or both cards, none of them are stellar. There's not a whole lot that's grabbing me, except for maybe a couple of the big matches are interesting, but I'm not overly interested in this card. But, we'll see how it goes. I'm going to check it out. Maybe they'll surprise me, and maybe my not caring is a side effect of me not watching New Japan for a full year. So we'll see how all this turns out. Wrestle Kingdom is yet to disappoint me, so hopefully the trend continues because I love Wrestle Kingdom. Typically have loved Wrestle Kingdom. So I think I've talked about enough wrestling. Again, there's not really a whole lot for me to talk about since AEW has been most of my focus. So let's get into movies and television. And a couple of things have been happening. A new Spider-Man movie came out. A new Matrix movie came out. One of these movies I saw, and the other one I did not see and have no intention of seeing. And that led me into wanting to do a discussion about reboots and how Hollywood and the entertainment industry are doing way too many reboots and they just need to stop it and come up with original things, because some of my favorite things I've seen this year have been completely original things, not based on anything, like Squid Game. And I wish I want to celebrate new things and not focus on constantly rehashing the old. And of course, I keep mentioning it, and I'm going to keep bringing it up so long as it's a thorn in my side. But that new Netflix He-Man, specifically Revelations, was so bad that it kind of broke me, and I don't want to watch anything based off anything that already exists. And I'm going to tie this into The Matrix. Now, a lot of people I've talked to who have seen the new Matrix movie have said that it's bad. I have absolutely no desire to see it. I think The Matrix says... The original Matrix is a classic. It is an action movie, science fiction classic. Undeniably. It was probably the last super cool movie of the 20th century. It was a revolutionary film that unfortunately got ruined. Well, the film didn't get ruined. The original movie's still a classic, but the brand of The Matrix got ruined with some mediocre sequels. And mediocre, I'm being extremely kind when I say mediocre. And a general oversaturation of the brand. Like that year, it was just like, I remember the year that the movies came out, it was just everything was Matrix, Matrix, Matrix. And it got parodied to death. And it got to a point where I was like, no more Matrix. I can't do, no, I'll just stick with the original movie and we're fine. And that's my attitude with this new movie. It's like, it might be good, might be bad. I mean, I'm more inclined to think that it's going to be the latter, and the response that it's gotten from the people I've talked to doesn't surprise me. But I just have no interest in seeing this. And actually, I was going over a bunch of things that have been rebooted recently, and I wrote the list down so I wouldn't forget any of them. Things I would do if I was put in charge of certain reboots of classic properties. Ghostbusters, which recently saw its return with Ghostbusters Afterlife, a movie that was generally well received. I haven't seen it. I had no desire to see it. And I completely lost any and all interest in seeing it once I heard Gozer was the villain. Because it's like, oh, they're just rehashing the old movie. I don't care anymore. But if I was rebooting Ghostbusters, I would have made it when Harold Ramis was still alive. And also not use the brand as a feminist shield to deflect any kind of criticism against it and ultimately turn the fan base against them. I wouldn't do that either. You know, that's a really bad move. Shouldn't do it. If I was rebooting Star Trek, I would create a show that reflects the positive outlook on the future that the brand has always strived to do, and not make it a nightmarish hellscape that you see in shows like Picard, where it looks like a post-apocalyptic hell world. I would also steer away from doing stupid, zany cartoons that look obnoxious and don't look like Star Trek at all, at least to me. That Lower Deck show looked absolutely insufferable. If I was rebooting Star Wars, I would have used the expanded universe, namely the video games and the books, and pull material from those sources to help create a new trilogy. That way we could have gotten Mara Jade, the Solo twins, the Yuuzhan Vong, all the stuff from the Old Republic era, and all sorts of other cool stuff that we never got to see in live action. I'm not saying that what I would have done would have been overly creative, but what I would have done was at least a plan, and it would have been better than the sequel trilogy turned out, which effectively killed Star Wars for me. If I was rebooting Transformers, I wouldn't make the robots boring assholes like they were in that War for Cybertron Netflix series that they did. If I was rebooting G.I. Joe, I would have Cobra Commander, Destro, and especially Snake Eyes appear in their masks for the entire time from start to finish and never show how they got the masks or what their backstories were. And this is where I'm going to quote Bane from The Dark Knight Rises. Nobody cared who they were until they put on the mask. Why would I want to watch a movie about these great characters that is about them before they were cool? I have no desire to see that. Preserve the mystery with these guys. That's what made them great, and they helped make G.I. Joe into a great brand. So protect their identities a little bit, and I think that would go a long way to fixing them. If I was rebooting Thundercats, I would make the Thundercats look like cats and kind of cool. Because they're supposed to be cats. What the fuck was Thundercats' roar? They look like goblins. What the fuck? If I was rebooting He-Man and the Masters of the Universe, I would put He-Man in the show and make him the focus. Because he's He-Man. The CGI show at least got that right. If I was rebooting Superman, I would make Superman the symbol of hope and goodness like he always was before, and not a stoic figure in a miserable nightmare world or a corrupt bad guy, which tends to be the portrayal of him these days. All-Star Superman and Superman for All Seasons are two of my favorite Superman comics, and they are good resources to pull from, I'm just saying. If I was rebooting Batman, I would not use the Joker as the main bad guy. I love the Joker, but he's been used so many times that I have absolutely lost count. He has plenty of other bad guys, like the Penguin, and Catwoman, and Mr. Freeze, and Poison Ivy, and Two-Face, and Ra's al Ghul, sorry. And Deadshot, and Hush. Hush would be a cool one. I like the Ventriloquist. You've got the Mad Hatter. You've got the Scarecrow. We've got a lot of options. And that seems to be something that Matt Reeves understands. He's directing the Batman. It's coming out next year. And I still have my doubts about Robert Pattinson as Batman. But it looks like the Riddler's going to be the villain. And it's not going to be another Joker movie. So that's a step in the right direction. And actually, while I'm on the topic of overusing villains, if I was rebooting Superman, I would absolutely steer away from having Lex Luthor and General Zod as the main villains because it's been done to death. And I love Lex Luthor, and Terrence Stamp as Zod is wonderful. I love him. But you've got other bad guys like Parasite and Bizarro and Metallo and the Toyman. There's other options. Livewire is another one. There's other options. Please, for the love of God. It can't just be Lex Luthor and General Zod all the time. If I was tasked with rebooting X-Men, I would say stop it. You've made enough. Don't ever make another X-Men movie. They've been pounded into the ground. Logan should have been the last one, and then you should have moved on. And yeah, that's about what I would do. If I was rebooting the classic Universal monsters, I would make horror movies. Why are we throwing $100 million budgets, or however much is being spent on these things, at movies like The Mummy, or like the Tom Cruise Mummy movie, or Dracula Untold, or the various shitty Frankenstein movies that you've made? You know these are supposed to be horror movies, right? You can make that shit for like 20 mil and make a really good movie out of it. I'm just saying, you're guaranteed to make a profit. The Invisible Man movie that we got a while back, that seemed to understand it. They got it right, and hey, it was actually pretty solid. Good for them. If I was rebooting Godzilla and King Kong, you know what? The MonsterVerse is doing a great job with this. They can keep going. Just keep doing what you're doing, guys. You're one of the few that I'm not mad at. Hashtag continue the MonsterVerse. Hashtag bring back Gigan. Hashtag Anguirus is my boy. Hashtag Biollante needs love. Hashtag fuck it, I like Jet Jaguar. Hashtag Godzilla vs. Gamera. And hashtag give me more monsters, give me more monsters. Jesus fucking Christ, give me more monsters. Throwing that out there. That's just me. I don't know how other people feel about the MonsterVerse. If I was rebooting Alien, I would at least try to have Ellen Ripley in the movie. I mean, it's not a guarantee for quality. She was in Aliens 3 and Resurrection, but I mean, she's like the main character and the most important character in the franchise. If I was going to be making an Alien movie, shouldn't you start from a place from what Ellen Ripley is currently doing? I don't know. Makes sense to me. If I was rebooting Terminator, I would ditch the whole time-traveling robots to kill the Messiah plot that we've gotten so many goddamn times that it makes my head hurt, and move the damn story forward. You know about Judgment Day and that whole like end of the world thing that was supposed to happen that the storyline was building to? Can we get that movie? Salvation wasn't good, but at least it tried. It at least tried to move forward. It's more than I can say for any of the other goddamn sequels post-Terminator 2. Fuck. If I was rebooting Cowboy Bebop, I would not reboot Cowboy Bebop. Or Avatar: The Last Airbender. Or Dragon Ball. Or anything that looks better in animation than it ever could in live action. Stop doing this. When Netflix greenlit that live-action Cowboy Bebop, I was like, oh my god, no, that is a horrible idea. And guess what? The show ran for one season and is already canceled. Stop doing this. Building off of that, if I was rebooting any of the Disney classic animated films and adapting them for live action, I would remind everybody involved that Disney Plus exists and the classics are at your fingertips with the simple click of a button. Why the hell would you spend hundreds of millions of dollars remaking a movie that already exists and most of your diehard fans already have access to? Seems like a waste of money. I don't know. I mean, granted, these things make $1 billion anyway, but it seems like maybe that gravy train is kind of slowed down. But I don't know. It just seems pointless to me. If I was rebooting Lord of the Rings, I remember that Peter Jackson's trilogy is almost perfect and to leave it the fuck alone. I've already put like 10 hours of my life into watching those movies in theaters because they were worth it. Why would we want to remake it or do anything with it? Amazon, I'm looking at you. If I was rebooting Halloween, I would burn the goddamn studio to the ground. Michael Myers has suffered enough. Leave him alone. And to be perfectly honest, I feel pretty much the same way about any horror movie that came out before the turn of the century. Please stop remaking them. For the love of God, please stop. And finally, if I was rebooting Home Alone, I would sodomize myself with a rusty chainsaw. Why the fuck did they make a new Home Alone movie? What is wrong with you people? Just stop it. Just stop. Please stop. No mas. The only reboots and only like current things based off of old properties that I'm even bothering with at this point are Godzilla still gets my attention, obviously, because Godzilla hasn't, and granted, Singular Point wasn't perfect, but it didn't make me hate myself for being a Godzilla fan, so I'll give it that. And the MonsterVerse has been thoroughly entertaining, so please give me more. Cobra Kai, because Cobra Kai is fucking great. And I think that's it. I mean, I would say DuckTales, but DuckTales wrapped up, so yeah, I think that's it. Oh, and the CGI He-Man, if that gets a season 2, I'll watch that. But I haven't. Unfortunately, I have a feeling that Revelations was so bad and it turned so many people off that it killed interest in the CGI show as well. I'm like, no, the CGI show is actually pretty solid. It's not perfect, but it deserves to exist. I mean, I give it that. I would hate for Kevin Smith's shittiness to be so bad that would actually downgrade the potential of another show and get another show canceled because of his own screw-ups. That would be absolutely horrible. But to be on the more positive side of things, there are 2 movies that I saw recently that I do want to talk about and give my thoughts on. Well, 3 movies, actually. One of them being an old movie. And I'll start with the old movie. So my girlfriend and I had a movie night, and she insisted that we watch Ghost, which is a classic movie. Came out in 1990, so this is a 31-year-old movie. And I had never seen it before. And Ghost was one of those movies that I thought was... I felt like it had been parodied so many times that I felt like I saw it. Like, it was one of those. Like, kind of like Planet of the Apes, or The Exorcist, or Psycho, those type of movies. It just got parodied so many times that you felt like you saw it before you saw it. And Ghost was one of those movies for me. It's like, yeah, I get it. Okay, it's Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore making goo-goo eyes at each other the entire time. And that's the movie. And the pottery scene, I know all about or at least I thought I did. I thought I knew all about the pottery scene through all the parodies and everything. And I just felt like I understood what the movie was, so I just never bothered with it. But I watched it, and that was like the best fucking movie I saw all year. Like, no joke. That was legitimately like the best fucking movie I saw all year. It puts most modern movies to absolute shame. And I'm like, wait, what the hell? Because it's not just a goo-goo, Demi Moore and Patrick Swayze make goo-goo eyes at each other for the entire time. It's actually like a pretty good movie with, drama and intrigue and fantastic world building where they establish the rules for how the ghosts work and how Patrick Swayze has to learn how to do things as a ghost. It's funny. It's dramatic. It's got like a crime story element to it. And it's romantic and emotional in the right places as well without being completely overbearing. Whoopi Goldberg's hilarious in it. And the general story I thought was very engaging. And I was like, well, now I'm kicking myself for not watching this movie earlier. This is legitimately like a really entertaining, very good, emotionally satisfying movie, generally across the board. And I watched this, I'm like, this puts so many modern movies to shame. It's pathetic. Like, it's absolutely pathetic. I can't wait for that Ghost. Well, no, they can't do it. Well, they'll just recast him. I mean, I was going to say Patrick Swayze's dead, but it's like, yeah, but they'll just recast him. They don't care anymore. I saw with the new Matrix movie, it's like, oh yeah, we don't have Hugo Weaving and Lawrence Fishburne returning. And I'm like, that is a terrible idea because they were the two best characters in the original movie. So, good luck doing the movie without them. But yeah, you don't realize just how bad modern cinema has gotten until you go back and watch something like a Ghost with completely fresh eyes and just be like, man, it used to be so much better back then. And it's like, yeah, Ghost is a classic and is deserving of it. And when I mentioned the parodies, the scene that always got parodied was the famous pottery scene. And when I watched the movie for the first time, I was like, wait a minute, he's not a ghost yet during the pottery scene. Because all the parodies I saw, he was already a ghost. I was like, and I thought that's what it was. It was Demi Moore playing around with the pottery, and then a ghost magically appears, and they make out and schmooze and make ghost babies. But no, that was not the case. He was still alive during that scene. I'm like, why did all the parodies get this wrong? Then I don't understand. So this is a case where I am happy to admit that I thoroughly enjoyed myself. And if you're like me and have not seen Ghost, I highly recommend it. I was like, wow, that's, again, probably my favorite movie I saw this year. And it's 31 years old. Well, Coda, I would probably give my favorite movie of the year to Coda. But, yeah, generally entertaining, classic film, deserving of its status, much to my surprise. Now, as for the newer movies that I saw, I did see Disney's latest animated movie, Encanto. I went a family movie day and went to go see it, and I don't really have a whole lot to say about it. I will say that it is beautifully animated. It's generally fun, nice family drama story. And I don't want to give away too much about it. But it was overall very cute. A couple of the songs are good. I like the opening song, and I really enjoyed We Don't Talk About Bruno, building up a very mysterious character that kind of hangs over the rest of the family like a dark cloud. That song's great. So it's got a couple of really catchy songs and is overall a pretty cute, fun movie. I think kids would really enjoy it. So if you're like me and you get stuck on a family outing where you're going off to see a Disney movie, there are worse ones to see than Encanto. I thought Encanto was overall pretty solid. And finally, I saw Spider-Man No Way Home, and this is coming after earlier in the year I said I was done with the MCU and I wasn't going to be watching everything religiously because Jesus Christ, I can't keep up with all that material. And I felt like Endgame was such an ending that we're kind of done, right? Like, I can walk away from this and be okay. And, but I decided to go see Spider-Man because my sister is a diehard Spider-Man fan. And I was like, you know what? I'll be there for you. And we kind of have this fun thing where it's like, if it's something that she's really into, like Spider-Man, I go with her and watch her react to stuff. And if it's something that I'm really into, like Godzilla, she comes with me so she can watch me react to stuff. So I watched Godzilla vs. Kong with her, and now it's like, you know what, I'm going to watch Spider-Man with you, and we're going to have a blast. And they took me, my sister and her husband, my brother-in-law, took me to this movie theater where they live that has a friggin' wall of beer where they give you like this little credit card thing, and you put money on the card, and then you stick it in the beer taps, and you just pour your own beers. And it's like, holy shit, I might never leave this place. This place sounds amazing. And they've got like 20 selections of beer all along this tap. And I'm like, I think I've died and gone to heaven. This is wonderful. So very cool theater. And then I go see the movie, and everyone is raving about this Spider-Man movie. And, yeah, it was really fun. It was really entertaining. Overall, I had a good time. Most of my issues with it are veer more on the nitpicky side of things. I guess I'll go into spoilers. So if you're one of the 3 people who haven't seen, because it broke a lot of records when it came out, if you have not seen Spider-Man No Way From Home, or No Way Home, shut the video off now because I'm going to go into full spoiler territory. But when you get into this multiverse thing that pulls in characters from all the other Spider-Man movies, the 2 Spider-Man series that preceded the MCU, the Tobey Maguire era and the Andrew Garfield era, that was really the major appeal of the film, is seeing all the different Spider-Man universes merge together into one thing. It's almost like they said, hey, you know that Spider-Verse movie that everyone liked? Let's do that, but in live action and with the actors that everybody really knows and likes. And I think overall they succeeded in creating a very fun and entertaining movie. Some characters fare better than others. Sandman kind of got the shaft because the actor wasn't there on set, so he was just completely a CGI character. And very confusing because he starts off kind of being friendly to Spider-Man, which is how he left off at the end of Spider-Man 3 of the Raimi films. But then he just becomes a bad guy for no reason. And he's there fighting the Spider-Man at the end of the film. I'm like, but I thought you were cool with Peter. What's going on? It just kind of, his character felt very inconsistent. Lizard from the first Andrew Garfield movie is kind of a joke machine, which doesn't feel right. Granted, I'm not the biggest fan of the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies. I'll more on him in a minute. But, so Lizard, and like, yeah, whatever. He was just kind of there. That said, the rest of them generally got used pretty well. The ones that impressed me the most were Alfred Molina's Doc Ock, and especially Willem Dafoe as Green Goblin. It was like no time had passed since the last time these 2 actors played those characters. And it's like, man, the Raimi movies really did have the best villains because they absolutely stole every scene they were in, it felt like. And Willem Dafoe, they made the wise decision. They finally realized, it's like, oh, hey, Willem Dafoe's got like a weird, rubbery, expressive face. He kind of doesn't need a mask. We can just have him be him. And it was like, yeah, that worked out pretty well. So you got a Green Goblin. It's like, Willem Dafoe looks like the Green Goblin. You don't have to work too hard. You don't have to create this Power Ranger helmet of his. You can actually just show his face. And it's the Green Goblin. So thankfully they went that route with it. And I thought he was great. It was like no time had passed. Since the last time he had played the role. And Alfred Molina, again, I thought he did really, really well as Doc Ock. Doc Ock is my personal favorite Spider-Man villain, so it was cool to see him again. And Electro, played by Jamie Foxx, who was a dud in Amazing Spider-Man 2, got to redeem himself a little bit here and portray the character less shitty. They ditched all the blue, dollar store Dr. Manhattan look. They ditched all of that and just let him be Jamie Foxx, and it was like, okay, this is much better. He's came off much better this time around. And then you look at the Spider-Man that came in. Of course, the big surprise: Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield both showed up in the film. My sister, Tobey Maguire, in her own words, is my Spider-Man. It was that first Spider-Man movie that got her interested in Spider-Man and got her so excited about the character. And it led to her becoming like the most knowledgeable person in regards to Spider-Man that I've ever known. Like, you could ask her virtually anything about Spider-Man, comics, TV shows, movies, anything about Spider-Man, and I'd say about a 90% chance she's going to know it. She is just obsessed with Spider-Man. And it was Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man that really got her into the character. So when Tobey Maguire popped up on screen, like the sheer joy on her face was something to behold. And I was glad I was there to see that. So it's great to have Tobey back. Again, he kind of was like, man, he just picked up right where he left off and just kept playing Spider-Man. But the real surprise was Andrew Garfield. Now, I said before, I did not like the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies, especially the second one. And I thought the first one was just a shitty remake of the first Raimi film. It was like a lesser version of the original Sam Raimi film. And he came through here. I thought he did a great job. And it was like, man, he redeemed himself. Look at that. He got a couple emotional moments. He got a couple of really good funny moments. Came across way better here than he'd had in the two movies that he starred in. And he probably got the biggest emotional moment of the movie, especially towards the end. And it was like, yeah, good for him. Good for Andrew. He got his day in the sun. Good for him. And, all this stuff going on, it almost makes the MCU Spider-Man, Tom Holland, seem unimportant. But no, he actually is the lead character of the film, gets to interact with Doctor Strange and everything. But thankfully, they didn't work too hard about, like, connecting everything to the MCU like they were prone to doing. Because that was part of what kind of killed WandaVision for me, was that they worked way too hard. Oh, we got to set this up and put this character here and put this character here and set this up, 3 movies down the road. I'm like, time out. You don't have to do that with every single thing that you do. So they thankfully kept that to the minimum here. With the exception of Doctor Strange being kind of like a focal point of kicking the plot off, they really left the MCU typical stuff to a minimum. Now, but what made Tom Holland's Spider-Man story work here is that they actually had things go really wrong for him, and he had to sacrifice something by the end of the film, which is essential to Spider-Man's character and something that wasn't really there as much in the first two MCU Spider-Man outings. Those movies were fun romps, but they didn't have like a whole lot in terms of emotional resonance and weren't very memorable, at least for me. They had cool villains. Mysterio was cool. Michael Keaton as the Vulture was cool. I kind of wish that Michael Keaton was the Vulture in this film just to kind of give it an unofficial Sinister Six and also represent the MCU Spider-Man villains as well. But in any case, I thought his story and particularly his friendships with MJ and Ned, gave the movie a little bit more of an emotional weight than the previous two MCU films that featured Spider-Man did. And people have made this complaint, and it's kind of true. The MCU Spider-Man up to this point, he'd just been kind of Iron Man Jr., and not really his own hero. And he's always been kind of in the shadow of the Avengers and specifically Iron Man. And that has been rectified here, thankfully. And it's like, this is the first MCU Spider-Man movie that felt 100% like a Spider-Man movie. And I think that's a good thing. Now, issues I have with it, mostly on the nitpicky side of things, but I thought the end climax, like the end battle, got a little bit too confusing at points because I had a hard time. It's like, wait, which Spider-Man? Because, you get 3 Spider-Men, and you get the big money shot with all 3 of them posing and everything, and it looks great, and it's cool, and all their interactions together are fantastic. But once the battle gets going, and they're all flying all over the place, I'm like, wait, is that Holland, or is that Maguire? Where's Andrew Garfield? It was hard to kind of keep track in some places who was who and who was fighting who. But once it settled down to just the Tom Holland Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, that was awesome. And they actually had a really cool fight scene in the middle of the movie where like Green Goblin was using wrestling moves. Like he literally power bombed Spider-Man through the floor. It was kind of cool, and I think he used a spine buster at one point too. But yeah, and like I mentioned, Sandman didn't come off as well as some of the other villains. Some of the Marvel quippy jokes creep their way in and kind of create. Some of them work, some of them are funny. It's the same with any MCU film. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it works. Other times it falls really, really flat, and there are times where they make jokes where they absolutely should not be making jokes. And that's true here. It's true in a lot of the Marvel movies, unfortunately. But fortunately, it doesn't get in the way of all the really good stuff that happens. And another issue I kind of had in regards to the story itself, there's a lot of like, it happens because plot needs to happen. Like, why does Doctor Strange help Spider-Man? Cast a spell that has really dangerous consequences just because one kid's life has been ruined, even though he worked with Spider-Man to stop Thanos and everything. It's like, that's a big risk to take just to help one kid's life. All that other stuff. I don't know. It seems like kind of reckless of Doctor Strange to even consider doing something like this. That creates the whole problem for the film. And Peter gets to a point where it's like, no, I don't want to like send the bad guys home where they're gonna die at the hands of Spider-Man. I want to help them and reform them, which is a very Spider-Man thing to do. However, when he has them all just show up at the condo that he's staying at, and I'm like, dude, shouldn't you like restrain them or maybe take them out one at a time before you start like doing this? And there's also like when the villains go bad, because of course they did. There's another part of me that's like, what exactly is their plan here? Like, are they just going to run around and cause chaos? Because there doesn't seem to be much of a plan. Like in Spider-Man 1, Green Goblin was this, source of anarchy that just ran around and caused chaos. But his goal was to use the Goblin persona to benefit Norman Osborn. But now he's in a universe where there is no Oscorp. So it's like, what exactly is his plan here? I don't even know. It seems like he just wants to fly around and blow shit up. There's no real plan to anything, but hey. But overall, I think everything was paced really well and overall very entertaining all the way throughout. And this movie, more than anything else, felt like a reward to everyone that watched every single Spider-Man movie from 2002 to today. So to that end, I thought it succeeded. And I thought Spider-Man No Way Home was a lot of fun and is deserving of most of the praise it's getting. Again, some people are saying it's like the best MCU movie. I'm like, okay, well, I wouldn't go that far, but it is the best Spider-Man MCU movie. I will definitely go that far. So yeah, Spider-Man No Way Home, if you're looking for a good movie to see in theaters, and one that, if you haven't been to movie theaters in a while because of COVID, and if you're not scared of the Decepticon variant or whatever the hell that thing is, go check out Spider-Man No Way Home. I thought it was a lot of fun. Okay, everyone, we're almost done here, but before I go, I've got one big thing that I want to do before signing off for 2021, and before I get to that, I want to talk about some updates for 2022 and things that I'm going to be doing. In regards to this channel, I think I'm going to keep pretty much the same schedule that I kept throughout this year. I think the days of me making videos on YouTube on a weekly basis are pretty much done, but I still want to do some live streams, and I want to do the pay-per-view reviews for the WWE pay-per-views from 2000. That was something that I talked about doing, and I want to cover that for sure. I'm in the process of watching those now. I also want to do something related to Batman the Animated Series. I'm still figuring that out. And I'll review all the big shows like the AEW pay-per-views and WrestleMania and the Royal Rumble. If I watch the Royal Rumble, we'll see. And definitely Wrestle Kingdom. I'm absolutely going to be watching that. So, there's going to be some stuff to look forward to for me in the year 2022 on this channel, even if it isn't as regular as it had been the first decade that I was doing this. And, of course, I'm going to be keeping up with Weekday Warriors of Wrestling and doing shows with Eric. Unfortunately, our schedules have been so out of whack lately that we haven't kept on a regular schedule, but it's, we will get around to doing shows next year as well. And I've got some big things coming up for me, both personally and professionally. I don't want to say what they are yet, but there is something in particular that I'm working on, and hopefully turns into something pretty cool. We'll see how it goes. I mean, currently it's in a bit of a working phase, but I'm kind of getting through it, and hopefully I can get that out in 2022, and I'll be able to talk about it more. But right now, I want to sign off here for the year by reading you all a Christmas story. It's festive season. It's a festive holiday season, and I think it would be great for me to close out by reading you guys a Christmas story. Some might even say the greatest Christmas story of all time. Die Hard. This is a children's book version of the classic movie, one of my all-time favorite movies, and definitely one of my favorite Christmas movies. And this version is written by Doogie Horner, which I'm assuming is a pseudonym. That doesn't sound like a real name. Illustrated by J.J. Harrison. And we will follow the adventures of one John McClane as he went over to Nakatomi Tower in California on that fateful Christmas Eve night. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and up in the tower, everyone was partying, except for one wallflower. Well, he's all lonely. John McClane missed his wife. Things just weren't the same since Holly had moved west and changed her last name. He tried to win her back, but still she said no, while unbeknownst to them, there was trouble down below. A truck had pulled up, and who should disembark but 14 men whose intentions were dark. He's a bad dude. That guy right there. He's a real bad dude. They spoke not a word and unloaded big crates. They cut the phone lines and locked all the gates. Carl swept the ground floor, shooting every guard dead, while visions of bearer bonds danced in his head. He actually claimed 2 victims in the movie. And actually did talk. Theo said quite a bit. John took off his shoes, making fists with his toes. It actually worked. Well, what do you know? When out in the lobby there arose such a clatter, he sprung to the door to see what was the matter. Ooh, shit's getting real now. When what to his wondering eyes should appear, holy crap! There are terrorists here! John hid under a table where no one could see and watched Hans question Mr. Takagi. I'm going to count to 3. There will not be a 4. Give me the codes to open the vault door. One of my favorite scenes in the movie. Alan Rickman was so good. So good. I don't know the codes, so go ahead and shoot. Okay, said Hans Gruber, and ruined Takagi's suit. John tried to call the cops by pulling an alarm, but instead called the bad guys who tried to cause harm. A lot of blood in this children's book. Wonder why. But John killed Tony, who had very small feet, and sent him to the terrorists as a Yuletide treat. He put a Santa hat on the German and eyes all aglow, wrote, "Now I have a machine gun. Ho, ho, ho." Carl was furious. Tony was his brother. He chased John across the roof, and they shot at each other. John was able to escape through the ventilation shafts. Come out to the coast, he sighed. We'll have a few laughs. I actually have this. I have this as a Christmas ornament on my tree. You can't really see it here, but it's pretty cool. Die Hard's a great movie. At Nakatomi Tower, Sergeant Powell appeared. He checked the whole lobby and saw nothing weird. He was pulling away, but didn't get far before Marco landed on the hood of his car. Powell drove away backwards, screaming in fright. "Welcome to the party, pal!" John yelled with delight. Al's one of my favorite characters, by the way. Such a delightful presence. More police arrived, the FBI, and a SWAT team. But Hans didn't mind. It was all part of his scheme. More rapid than eagles, his henchmen they came, and he radioed and shouted and called them by name. Now Eddie, now James, now Franco, now Uli. On Fritz and on Carl, hair long and unruly. They shot the SWAT tank with a surface-to-air missile and knocked it away like the down of a thistle. Now John McClane was angry indeed. He blew up 2 terrorists and called them jerkweed. Ellis told Hans, "Bubby, I'm your white knight." Hans shot him dead, giving the hostages a fright. Hans went to check on the explosives fuse and saw that poor John was not wearing any shoes. Ellis was one of my favorite characters, too, for being a complete and utter clown. John fled from Carl and Hans, but alas, he had to run barefoot over sharp, broken glass. His feet, how they hurt, his soles oh so bloody. John crawled to the bathroom and called his good buddy. John was weary and ready to throw in the towel until he got a pep talk from Sergeant Al Powell. See, I told you, he's a good guy. Powell was chubby and plump, a right jolly old cop, and he trusted the cowboy in the tattered tank top. But a reporter was probing into McClane's life and revealed that Holly was actually John's wife. Hans quickly flipped over the gold picture frame. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. McClane." His clothes all tarnished with ashes and soot, John staggered to the roof, bloody and barefoot. We're getting towards the climax here. It's getting exciting. The explosives were wired to the rooftop with care, in hopes that the hostages would soon be there. John warned everyone the roof would soon blow, as the chopper strafed him with high-powered ammo. "I'm on your side, you assholes!" Around his waist, he tied a fire hose tight, and screaming an oath, he jumped into the night. He dangled in the air and gritted his teeth, while flames encircled the tower like a wreath. That's one of the most iconic images from the movie, I think, him jumping off the tower. Fiercely fighting his way back inside, John yelled out, "Hans!" He was done trying to hide. He limped to the vault like an old man on crutches, only to find Holly in his filthy clutches. John dropped his gun and put his hand on his head. It seemed he and Holly soon would be dead. But with a secret gun taped to his back, John shot Hans in a surprise attack. Hans fell out the window, still holding Holly's arm, and slowly, deliberately raised his firearm. The tenacious villain held on by his nails, till John unhooked Holly's watch and said, "Happy trails." One of the most iconic villain deaths of all time. Bearer bonds fluttered like fresh fallen snow as Holly embraced her blood-spattered beau. So Merry Christmas to all. Be kind to one another. And most of all, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and farewell, everyone.